Speaking to Peggy Grandy in America yesterday, remember I raised this issue of the former President Donald Trump speaking in Maryland, which is not far from Washington actually. By the way, Maryland allegedly is the birthplace of the US national anthem. That aside, in delivering the headline speech, Donald Trump talked about warmongers and cast himself as the anti-World War III candidate. In a 90-minute speech, he railed against war no fewer than a dozen times. In a straw poll taken of those attending, Trump won 62% of support. Now, I raised this issue last week when I talked about Ukraine and the simple proposition that America, going in boots and all in support of Ukraine, axiomatically places America on a collision course with Russia. Now, Trump has warned many times that in that scenario, Russia and China are driven closer together, and that alliance would undeniably change the world order. China with arguably the biggest economy in the world, Russia with massive natural resources. Trump, anti-war. And as I've also said before, when Trump was president, we didn't hear a whimper out of the rocketman in North Korea, nor from President Xi in China, and nor from Putin. People used to joke about Trump, saying words to the effect that Trump would say, look, I know you've got big toys, you blokes, but just remember ours are bigger. Well, in the last 24 hours, President Xi and his foreign minister have accused America and its allies of waging, quote, all-round containment, unquote, on China, and warning of, quote, catastrophic consequences, unquote, unless Washington, quote, hits the brakes in its approach to Beijing. The Foreign Minister, Qin Gang, read from a copy of China's constitution to assert that Taiwan was part of the motherland and warned against foreign interference in China's, quote, internal affairs. Now, if you marry those comments about America's need to hit the brakes and that America is speeding down the wrong path, the Foreign Minister also defended, and here we're reminded of Trump's observations, and Trump alone making those observations, the Foreign Minister defended the close relationship between China and Russia and said the ties between Beijing and Moscow, quote, set an example for global foreign relations. He said, unquote, quote, with China and Russia working together, the world will have a driving force, unquote. There's no doubt about that. But are we comfortable with that driving force? Now, I made those points last week in relation to the whole Ukraine issue. The Chinese Foreign Minister said yesterday ominously, quote, the more unstable the world becomes, the more imperative it is for China and Russia to steadily advance their relations, unquote. He affirmed that there was, quote, close contact, unquote, between the leadership of the two countries and that, quote, head of state relations formed the anchor of the relationship. That's Xi and Putin. Precisely what Trump was arguing. I've also previously mentioned on the program that China and US relations have deteriorated under President Biden. You've got the US shooting down what it said was a Chinese spy balloon following in US airspace, further proof that China believes it's open season with a weak and incoherent Biden as president. But in this speech yesterday, the Chinese Foreign Minister blamed America for the worsening relations. He cited the balloon incident, but then talked about tensions over Taiwan and the Ukraine war. And this is where there's cause for concern, because America and most of NATO are pouring resources into Ukraine, which means pouring resources in opposition to Russia, instead of, as Trump would argue, sitting these people down and talking about a satisfactory resolution. You cannot, in this war between Russia and Ukraine, have a winner-take-all. Zelensky will not be able to have everything he wants, including Crimea, and nor will Putin be able to argue that the pro-Russian component of Ukraine must be absorbed into Russia. So the war goes on.